it might be banning news agencies from press conferences, the reasons for which I saw something as well that they haven't started referring to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America yet, and that was potentially another reason why they've been uninvited. Or they've placed gag orders on federal employees so they can't speak publicly about the sort of the Doge activity that's going on. And then you're standing on this stage talking about how you want to be a champion for free speech and all these like egregious breaches of it that are happening in Europe. So, same way you look at Kemi Badenoch, who's trying to insert herself into this conversation over the weekend with that piece she wrote in the Telegraph lamenting her concerns about lack of free speech. It's hypocrisy of the highest order, right? Because she voted for the Police Crime Sentencing in Courts Act, right? That introduced draconian prison sentences for political protests that were too loud. Her government that banned the introduction of quote unquote anti-capitalist materials in schools. Like, these people don't care about free speech. They use it as a Trojan horse for the issues they care about. So with JD Vance, for example, it's like these freaks who are turning up and praying outside abortion clinics. It's like, you have impinged on that man's free speech. He doesn't care about the protesters that are getting these like insane prison sentences for walking down roads. He doesn't care about any of the actual sort of material attacks that are happening on free speech. It's entirely a political vehicle.
Can I just correct you?
Please.
I don't think it's fair that these people who've been silently praying outside abortion clinics are arrested because they just happened to be outside an abortion clinic. And they while simultaneously having a background in anti-abortion campaigning.
We've all bumped into a friend before.
Yeah, yes, of course.
Had a catch up.
This was a new development in prayer for me, because I didn't realise it worked like an induction hob, and it had to be in contact with the thing that you were praying about. I thought the whole point of prayer was you could do it anywhere.
No,
it was convenient.
We've all
seen, at home, at church.
We've all seen, like evangelical pastors like praying with their hands on someone.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
That's a lot more effective. So what they should ideally be doing is be face against the glass of the abortion clinic.
That's why they had to introduce the buffer zones, because there were like millions of evangelicals pressing their faces up against the abortion clinic.
And speaking to them. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
There was like one of these people, I don't want to name them because I can't be bothered, but there's one of them. One of them goes to these abortion clinics and they will convince the partner to go back inside and say, tell her not to get it. They'll do this. And then when they're arrested for it, they're like, but I was just praying. I was only praying.
Yeah, and this is it. First of all, who are these people that are doing the silent praying? And quite often, if you ask them, or you ask, for example, students that are out flyering about abortion on university campuses, 9 times out of 10, they're quite often Americans who are being paid for by American organisations to come here and campaign around this issue, because broadly speaking, like, abortion is a settled issue in Britain, despite the best efforts of organisations like this. And that is because, like, our civil society broadly is secular, right? Like, we're very happy. We don't want or need some religious freak deciding that they're going to pray for your unborn baby, right? And in the same way, on a personal level, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but obviously there was that video this weekend of that guy who burnt the Quran, like getting attacked by a bloke with a knife and like getting kicked in the street. In the same way, like, I'm okay with you being religious privately. The second you introduce it into the public sphere, i.e. you're trying to pray outside abortion clinics, or you're attacking people in the street with a knife because they burnt a Quran, which is, don't get me wrong, like, I would say, distasteful. I don't think you deserve to be stabbed for doing it, and I certainly don't think it's a criminal offence to do it either.
Oh, you don't think it's a criminal offence to burn the Quran outside the Turkish embassy?
No. I think if it was outside a mosque, I think you're getting towards like public order offence at that point.
Incitement to violence.
But why do you think he was doing it? You think he was doing it just for the fun of it, just for the hell of it?
I think he was doing it to be like incredibly provocative,
Yeah, which I would suggest is incitement.
No? Well, I think because it was outside the embassy and it was sort of a political protest in that way. Look, the thing we're talking about here, and with all of this, with about free speech, with about incitement to violence, with about hate speech, I appreciate, like, it's a grey area. There aren't like clear lines, and we'll probably sit on these things differently. But for me, I think the bar for like a public order offence for doing something like that has to be quite high. I think broadly speaking, doing it outside an embassy, not quite the same. I think doing it outside a mosque, where you're literally going to like the site of where the people of this faith are, and you're deliberately doing something incredibly provocative. At that point, I think there's a pretty strong case for incitement. I think there's a pretty strong case for a public order offence. But if you're just in like a random street outside an embassy doing it as a protest, I'm not sure it's quite there for me in the same way.
I'm not confident on that line of thinking, but perhaps we can return to it.
Yeah.
I did thought it was quite funny that the delivery driver turned up, just gave him a kick and then cycled back off again. I thought that was just quite funny.
What more?
Do they offer that now?
Huh?
Yeah.
Random acts of violence.
Yeah, if you're, that premium subscriber thing. Yeah, if you do that, they'll
you get a lackey.
They'll dish one out for you.
What I thought was interesting about Vance's speech was he was almost providing a template to movements in Europe or people in Europe as to do these things, stand for these principles, and you will get the endorsement of the Trump White House. You've seen the governments that kind of embody those values already, like Meloni in Italy was invited to the inauguration, Milei. So, and you're tarring quite different figures politically with the same brush, but you are tarring like Scholz, Macron, Starmer, Tusk, like all these people as just like broadly leftist liberals who are the enemy within for protecting liberal democracy, I guess. So there's a carrot for, or encouragement for all these alternative political movements. Like Scholz made the point that there is a firewall against the AfD in Germany because it has its roots in Nazism, and every German should have a moral obligation to stand against Nazism. So, but for the AfD and organisations like it, hearing the encouragement of the vice president on a stage like that, it just provides fuel to the fire almost.
I also, to your point, right, about the diversity of political positions and opinions in Europe, clearly, I had a similar read on it, which was it felt like Vance was like the emissary to like a colonial outpost of the American empire, which they view as a monolith, and is basically like, I will now go and speak to Europe and tell them about the problem with their politics. Because I guess, talking comparative size, whether it's economies, landmass, for America to sort of talk about, I don't know, the politics of Spain or Poland or Germany in isolation, it kind of feels like almost too small time for him to be dealing with. Whereas if he goes and engages with the European Union as a whole, which obviously is, how it's done on trade terms and often on political terms, that kind of makes more sense, because at that point you're sort of getting towards powers of comparable scale and size. And my understanding, and I guess we'll talk about this in the context of the Ukraine stuff as well, is that it's part of that reset towards like the return of great power politics, where it's, the US and Russia having a bilat to decide the future of Ukraine, not involving, for example, any of the European nations, or Starmer trying to do this sort of like bridging exercise between Europe and America. It does have that kind of, well, dare I say it, Cold War-ish feel